something new is growing in the prison yards of Nigeria, raising agripreneurs in prisons.
The workforce of tomorrow. Schools in Rwanda and Senegal add soft skills training to academic curriculum.
Black Panther premieres in the Kenyan hometown of starring actress Lupita Nyong'o. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Africa 54, a show that brings you all the stories from around the continent. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent Makori at the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks a lot, Joke and Vincent Makori at our global headquarters in Washington, D.C. Happy to be with you for another edition of Africa 54. Today we start by meeting Nigerian inmates who are getting a fresh start in prison. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
That's right. The last place anyone will want to be is in a prison yard, deprived of one's freedom. But for some, incarceration provides a chance for a new beginning. Prison reformation also yields other benefits, such as better security in countries like the Netherlands, where positive attitude towards inmates translates to low crime rate and fewer prisons. In Nigeria, prison authorities are also providing education, skills-building programs, and other learning schemes to enable prisoners live a crime-free life upon release. Here's that story.
Standing between about 3,000 male inmates and their freedom is this prison gate. The Kirikiri Medium Prison in Lagos, one of 5 such facilities in the state, is among 240 prisons nationwide where people who are on the wrong side of the law serve out jail terms. It's a different world inside. Beyond the idea of atoning for crimes committed, prisons serve for reformation and rehabilitation of inmates in order to purge them of criminal vices. Flourishing within the perimeter walls of a prison yard are vegetables of different sorts, planted by inmates under the income-earning scheme. Inmates are trained to become farmers with the aim of making some money with which to start new lives when they leave the prison.
Definitely, if they're empowered in agriculture, for example, by the time they go out, they're able to stand for themselves. They won't need to go looking for a job. They can just get a land and start farming. And then before you know it, they are on their own.
The success so far is attributed to the level of monitoring and training by prison officials with agricultural expertise as well as partnerships.
When you look at the inmates, since the project has started, they put in their passion into it. They are becoming regularly for the project. Even without even telling them what to do, they know what to do.
For the private investors involved in the agric scheme, solutions to food security and creating wealth and employment in Nigeria lie in agriculture, and the prisons hold a substantial youth population who can become part of the solution instead of being a problem in society when they get out.
Most of them are keen about the sustainability. Most of them ask questions of how can we, when we get out of the yard, how can we locate you so that we can continue in this line. So, and I consider it as something not even beneficiary to the inmates alone, but something beneficiary to the country at large, because in a way we are reducing the number of unemployment in the country and also ensuring food security in the country.
Having planted in December, the budding farmers are looking forward to more than a bountiful harvest in the coming week. For many of them, this is a new lease of life, and many like this 35-year-old inmates are determined to make the best use of it.
I've learned a lot because I've never been to a farm before, but ever been in prison, I've learned a lot. At least I can farm. I've learned a lot anyway. So I'm very happy that when I leave this prison, I'll be very happy to go into farming myself.
The earner scheme is designed for convicted inmates who have a fixed time period to serve in prison and will run for the duration of their sentences. The positive impact of the scheme reflects in the desire of prisoners to gain as much knowledge as possible under the various skills acquisition programs. The scheme includes other activities such as poultry, fishing, carpentry, welding, and many more, aimed at equipping the inmates with life skills so they don't return to crime when they walk out of the gates and into freedom.
Speaking of regaining freedom, barely 4 years after the abduction of over 200 schoolgirls from Chibok in Borno State, northeast Nigeria, another set of girls has been kidnapped by Boko Haram insurgents in an attack on Government Girls Science and Technical College in Dapchi, this time Yobe State, but also in the northeast. Security operations are in full swing to rescue this set of girls, as well as the remaining Chibok students still in captivity. Chidinwanu is a security analyst, and he joins us from London to talk about all that needs to be considered in the rescue operation. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
What was your first reaction when you heard about the kidnap of the students in Dapchi?
Honestly, I was not necessarily surprised by this event. When you look at the situation that has occurred now in Dapchi and you compare it to what happened in Chibok, there are many similarities between the two events, and you can kind of understand, the trajectory of what is happening. If we look at Chibok first, it was in the run-up to an election, a presidential election. There was obviously an offensive going on, or at least some sort of action going on against Boko Haram at the time. So from Boko Haram's point of view, if we fast forward now to Dapchi, we have a situation where they are being, as the government says, they are being technically defeated. They're on the back foot, but they know that they can achieve a quick win by grabbing a few hundred girls. It will go across the entire world media, and the federal government will be under pressure to negotiate and pay a ransom and recover these girls. So it's a logical kind of step for them.
Well, some have suggested, actually, that increased military presence around schools in the northeast, and some believe it may be better to stop boarding schools altogether. What would be a good approach to safeguarding not just schools but the entire region?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and it's one of the balances that a government or a military has to make. So the forces to secure every single school, as in to harden it completely and prevent it from being attacked, are not there. It will take a lot of troops, and those troops would need to be sustained. So for every soldier that you would deploy to guard a school, you need maybe 2 or 3 at the back to sustain them, to replace them, and to keep them going. So it would suck up a huge amount of manpower from the Nigerian military or the Nigerian police. So it's really not feasible. Stopping boarding is an option, but the problem with stopping boarding is that you're in essence conceding to the enemy one of their key objectives, which is to reverse the advance of education, and particularly the education of girls and further education, especially in a science and technical college such as this. So if you stop boarding, a lot of kids that should go to school won't be able to go to school because it's too far from their houses. So it's you have to make that balance. Is it worth, stopping schools and then retarding the education of these children, or you keep them in school and run the risk of them being abducted? It's a very difficult kind of conundrum.
What would you suggest that the security forces, should adopt in terms of intelligence?
It's again, interesting question. In terms of intelligence, there's not much they can do beyond what they're doing now. Boko Haram is a very amorphous group. So the best type of intelligence you'll have with them is human intelligence. So people within the groups who are passing information, and also from the villages. So Boko Haram, despite a lot of, the mythology around them, is not that sophisticated. They use very, easy to trace communications. They don't move with as much stealth as you would expect. So whenever they're going to attack a position, villagers see them, the villagers report it. So the question that you have to ask the Nigerian forces is, how is that information collected? How is it rated? And how is it passed on to the relevant authorities? So it's not a matter of, the general answer in Nigeria is always go and buy more technology, go and buy more equipment, buy drones or whatever it is. Those things are all useful, but it's how you use that information and how you disseminate it, rather than anything, really spectacular like buying new equipment or something like that.
Right. So if I take it up from where you stopped, so how difficult of a task do you think it is, for the security forces to, protect communities in the northeast now, bearing in mind that, they've said that, Boko Haram has been degraded up to a certain point? How can they protect, those communities from attacks, not knowing when the attacks will come?
The short answer is that they cannot. And they cannot for several very practical reasons and some very impractical reasons. The first practical reason is that area is huge. You have a lot of space, you have a lot of people, a lot of villages are really spread out, very difficult to get to, difficult to defend. Even if you hear about an attack, it takes you a long time to get there because the infrastructure is not there in terms of roads, helicopters, etc. to get you there. That's number one. Number two is that the Nigerian army and the Nigerian government has perpetuated a narrative that Boko Haram is defeated. And because they perpetuated this narrative, they are now acting to that narrative rather than acting to the reality. And because of that, they're withdrawing troops down from the northeast. They're downgrading their operations and pumping out constant, messages about Shekau is running away dressed as a woman, Mama Nur is injured, instead of focusing on the practicalities of what's on the ground. So the long answer, as I said, is you can't protect all those communities unless you flood the northeast with troops. And Nigeria does not have enough troops to garrison the northeast in the way it needs to be garrisoned, and it does not have the equipment. So it's going to be, unless the Nigerian government starts being very honest with itself and say, yes, we have technically defeated Boko Haram, but we have not destroyed them or degraded them to the point where they are no longer effective.
Right.
And we need to move to the next stage in order to get that done.
Right. Thank you so much, security analyst Chidi Nwanu. Thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Now, coming up, a group of resourceful and creative women turning waste into wealth in Egypt.